Hello and good morning to Avero Live today. My name is AV. I'm the founder and CEO at Avero, and we go live every Wednesday with a different topic, different guest, just keeping an eye and our pulse on the industry, just so we can bring all of this knowledge to our clients. Um, you can also check us out on our website, www.averoadvisors.com, and our YouTube channel, which I'll be sharing with you today. Uh, and today's topic is really interesting to me because we've done a lot of um, content about this in the last several months, and because of my career in technology consulting so far, these are some topics that are recurrent in theme. Um, and I think it's a good time for us to revisit and uh, talk about the role of the CIO in digital transformation and ERP consulting, ERP projects and implementations, and how they play a very pivotal role in implementing your new system and getting you off of an older platform, manual processes, and just inefficiencies in general. So a huge role is played by the CIO. You may call it the IT director, IT manager, chief technology officer, several different names to this profession and position. But primarily, it is the person that controls your technology infrastructure. Now, in in the old days, this function controlled hardware, software, vendor relationships. They built the software for you. They maintained the software for you. You own the thing. On the security side, they own the hardware. They had the keys to the kingdom, and they do today. Except now we do things like software as a service, cloud solutions, cloud hosting. A lot of things are outsourced. There are great managed service providers out there that can take the bulk of the heavy lifting off of your IT organization, but you still need a leader within your organization that can make strategic decisions for you. So, with that said, pop in the chat, tell me where you're joining from, and if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat box and we will answer them as they come in. But I also want to show you a few things today. So one of the blogs on our website that have been really popular with the readers and on our YouTube channel when we did this the series on questions to ask the CIO, those have become very popular. So I would encourage you to. I'm going to pop this into the chat box. Encourage you to go and visit this uh, blog. Of course, we wrote this a few years ago, but the questions remain relevant. And then we've evolved them to reflect more of the 2024 questions. So really good content. And I'm just gonna show you here, and we can go through this. So uh, w- again, so let me start off by saying why this, right? Why are we talking about this important topic? My audience, Avero's audience, is are their mayors, city managers, high level executives at um, various different government agencies, quasi government agencies, their housers, their utility directors, very smart people, but nuts and bolts IT isn't quite there day-to-day job. They don't know what they don't know, and they rely on their CIOs to help them understand what things mean and what impacts things have, and why are you asking for a certain amount in your budget, Mr. or Miss CIO. And a lot of times there's a lack of translation between the business side and the tech side, and that's where we come in too. We help do the translation and help each side out, and this is the reason why we came up with this topic for our blog post and today, is to help that facilitate that conversation between two very important sides. So this isn't anything to meant to nail down a CIO or anything like that. This is really to help our executive friends get the most out of that position and function that is really important to the organization. um, so I mean, at a strategic level, if I'm the mayor or executive director, I want to know if we have an IT strategic plan that aligns well with our organizational strategic plan. Those two things need to be aligned. You need to have one vision for your organization. and then that needs to be derived or distilled into an IT strategic plan. And why that's important is because you can't have your IT organization going and buying things that don't support your overall mission, don't support the organization's overall direction. So to have an IT strategic plan is important, but in the event that you don't have an organizational strategic plan, it's important to go at the IT strategic plan from, the first thing you need to do is set the vision for your organization, because technology can do anything for you. You just have to describe and tell it what you want done. So an IT strategic plan is really important. And if you're a new executive that is overseeing an IT organization, or if the CIO is your peer, I'd encourage you to ask this question first. Do you have an IT strategic plan? And if you don't, we can help you create one at Avero. This is one of the things we do really well. What is our disaster recovery plan? Um, Having backups is not a disaster recovery plan. A disaster recovery plan that is robust includes things like incident response, knowing exactly what to do when you do have an incident. How do you find an incident? How do you what is defined as an incident? And where do you go when something happens? What's the first thing you do, second thing you do, third thing you do? How do you engage the media? How do you do PR around it? That is the definition of a disaster recovery plan, not just the fact that we have tapes in the operations center which we can bring in and fire up. And by the way, if that is your disaster recovery plan, if all you have is backups, make sure those backups are recoverable, because we've seen many times that yes, you have 10 years worth of backups on tapes and CDs, um, but they're not recoverable because either the backup process didn't complete, you didn't do it right, or physical media, it got destroyed. So make sure that your DR plan has all of these functions baked in. And again, asking about a DR plan, a disaster recovery plan, is crucial, because that data is the new commodity. It's the new oil, and you have to make sure that historical data, if not in your current system, is well protected and archived somewhere safe. Next one is, what's the status of vendor support on our applications? This is my favorite question, because a lot of times when we go into client sites to conduct an IT strategic plan or do an implementation of some sort, or just do a needs assessment or whether or not your current ERP system is the right one for you, what we'll find is that when you bought a certain system or you bought a certain network stack or switches, that you didn't buy the support associated with it. Your whoever did the purchasing said, yeah, we don't need to spend the extra 10K, we can handle it ourselves. And what that does is you don't have the latest and greatest support, you can't call anybody, or you just have some very basic level of support. So buying support with the things that you buy, hardware, software, very important. So this question is, how are our applications supported? Are we doing it in-house? Are we doing it through the vendor? Are we doing it third party? It's very important to have support. And a lot of times too, we found that departments will buy a certain thing, they'll buy the support, and then they'll hesitate to call support. If something breaks, they'll spend 2 or 3 days to try and fix it themselves, Google it, chat GPT it these days, and not fix the problem. And the last person to call is the support vendor. Should be the first people to call because you've paid for the vendor support. Just call the vendor support. Okay. So really, really important question to ask. Um, and I'm going to take audience questions too. Megan says, given the current silos in most organizations, what is the best way to approach a CIO for discussions on visioning and recovery strategies? Communication is key. Um, and this is why we're doing this session, right? The silos can be broken if the executives that are not IT savvy or not as IT savvy have the right questions to ask. You you can't just rely on an answer you get, especially if you're new to the organization. You have to have the right tools. So communication is important, and having the right team in place is important. Everyone's well-meaning, um, and no one's hoarding information anymore. It's just a matter of how do you communicate. Do you have the right questions? And do you have the right answers for these questions? That becomes the important part, as you ease yourself into a new organization, or a new CIO has come in, or you just established an IT organization, and now you have a CIO. So it's really important to have organizational goals up front and foremost, and then all things IT need to fall behind it. Patch testing policies, procedures. This is a given. Um, if you're on Microsoft, like most organizations in the world are, you have to make sure that you're keeping up with your patch schedules, that you're taking the upgrades, no matter how small. You have to take the upgrades in a timely manner, uh, because as we found out, tech software companies may not tell you that there's a vulnerability in your software that they're trying to fix with this patch, and sometimes they'll tell you, but no matter what, you have to take the patches. So this is a more technical item, but you have to this is a good question to ask. Are we taking patches? What is our procedure and policy on taking security patches and upgrades from our major vendors? Because that will feed into your disaster recovery, into your cybersecurity plan, and all of those good things. What IT processes are automated? This is also great because uh, things like backups, things like patching, things like just making sure that your systems are secure are very automatable today. People don't have to come to your desk to take a backup. People don't have to come to your desk to change your password. They don't have to come to your desk to do most things. Um, if your IT infrastructure is set up right, it can all be done remotely. It can all be monitored remotely, either in house or through an MSP partner. And those kind of processes need to be automated in a modern environment. What service level agreements are in place between IT and other departments? Again, this is a question that is a very mature question, right? Service level agreements between departments are sort of uh, they're spoken, they're verbal, there's no real hierarchy, or there's no real um, thought behind it. It just has happened in most organizations. What an SLA between departments means that if you, let's say it's a housing authority, and the housing department owns a very specific specialized piece of software that only they know how to use, but IT is responsible for keeping up with it. Where is that line? Because you can't ask or expect IT to be an expert in a housing authority, very specific functionally software. Their job is to make sure that things are backed up, that you have the right connectivity, that things work at all times. But the service level agreement does not extend to understanding why you need a certain report, innately. You may have to explain it to them, but that's what I mean by service level agreement. Where do you draw the line on IT support? Because just because it says software does not mean it's all IT. There's a distinction there. And a lot of times IT departments and CIOs stumble on this because they take on too much, and they take on the responsibility of being an expert in the business function of the that the software is associated with. Um, so these are just some preliminary questions that I would encourage asking. I'm going to take some more audience questions here. Um, as a CIO, known as one of the loneliest positions in any organizations, yeah. How do you stay effective in keeping up with current enterprise tech trends? Great question. I think the number one method is being open, having an open mind. Because if you're a CIO, you should be the first one to know that technology changes more rapidly than anything else. So you can't just sit back and say what we implemented 10 years ago is still the gold standard, that is still the standard we'll stick to, and ignoring everything that's new. It's 2024, and just now the majority of CIOs in the public sector are thinking about the cloud. They're thinking about software as a service. They're thinking about upgrading on-premise solutions. So keeping an open mind is one. Talk to your vendors. Go to conferences, mingle, get demos, and explore what's out there. Talk to other CIOs. Go to industry conferences. Those CIOs that do all of these things and stay on top of the industry one, and not just from a tech standpoint, they make it a point to match all of that to the business needs, because you can't just run a an IT organization in a silo anymore. We did a whole series of videos on this topic last month on what is the role of the CIO? How is the CIO changing today? What is expected? You can't just be a CIO that sits in your office and solves tickets or hangs large screen TVs. We've seen this happen. You have to be forward thinking, almost the propeller head of the organization, right? Sometimes technology leads change. Sometimes technology leads change in vision. A lot of times when we go do a needs assessment on an ERP system, we see that people are doing the organization's doing business like they did 30 years ago, and we ask them why, and it's because the system that they use for accounting or finance doesn't allow them to do things in a different way. So what a cool position to be in for a CIO, to effect change at that level. But that means that they have to stay on top of things. They should be an elevated position. They should not be taking help desk tickets. They should be the visionaries for the organization, and truly at the executive level. um, Next question: how do the role of CIOs in public sector differ from those in the private sector? I don't think I don't think greatly. I think uh, the nature of the public sector is, they're supposed to be risk averse. The whole organization is supposed to be risk averse. You're supposed to watch for the taxpayers' dollars. You're supposed to watch for the taxpayers' investments and money, um, and it's natural for them to be behind the times, sometimes by choice, because government is not by definition risk taking. So that sort of translates uh, to the CIO's position. They are most of them, and by design, and it's a good thing, risk averse. They want to be they want to make sure that the organizations are secure, number one, uh, and then they want to make sure that they're somewhat, you know modernized. So at the very basic level, they don't quite have the pressures to watch for the bottom line or increase the stock prices. That's the biggest difference. So the pressure is less, um, but at the same time, they're the ones that are making sure that things run. A lot of times, it's an underappreciated position. It's an underappreciated department. We've been to many cities and counties where one person is running the whole show. They're the CIO, they're the help desk, they are the report writer, they're everything. Um, and I think the other major difference is asking for things does not come naturally to public sector CIOs. At least this in my experience. Um, why hasn't your budget changed in the last 3 years? Well, we don't think council is going to approve an increase. We don't think council will approve an increase for a new system or new uh, stack of servers. And so salesmanship is not quite there. I think a big part in the private sector is CIOs are very good at selling their own services and asking for more, and pushing the envelope. And again, by design or not, that's a major difference, I think. Kyler says, I also add getting a transformation coach like Avero advisors. Thank you. This provides you with the opportunity to consult an independent coach for any questions or concerns, just like an executive coach. Yeah, a lot of times we do that for our CIO friends, that our clients are not, just a sounding board. Um, and sometimes it's a formalized sort of, we have a package of hours that they use up, or again, we don't shy away from giving quick, free advice. So it's not always a paid gig. But yeah, having an executive coach is one thing. CIOs need to have executive coaches because it's not an easy position. It's not an easy job to have. So I want to get into some other questions that you should be asking, you should be keeping in front of your mind, or thinking about as you think about your IT organization, right? And when I say you, You're probably a mayor, you're probably a city manager, a CFO, public works director, someone that runs an airport, that has a CIO that is great at their job, and you're the one that has to keep up. And these are some pointers on how to ask for the right information that helps you make decisions at an organizational level. Let's see. I can find my notes. All right. So the first one is we've talked about strategic alignment a little bit, and we talked about, do we have an IT strategic plan or not? This one's more specific. Does your IT strategic plan align with our business needs? Um, I know we touched on it a little bit, but this is an important point. It can't just be an IT strategic plan that says in 5 years we're going to spend $2 million and buy all Cisco equipment and go buy, Oracle's latest AI thing. And as a CEO or executive director or mayor, you should be asking, okay, great. How does that align with our overall strategy? What is it going to do for the organization? How are we going to deliver services better to our citizens and customers? Key question. Um, what key IT initiatives are currently underway, and how are they organized? Another key question. A lot of times when we go into you know uh, you know organizations that are not performing as well as they should be, we see that there's a lot of projects. One, there's no definition of project. The PMI, Project Management Institute, defines it clearly. A project is something that has a clear scope, has a clear start date, and a finish date. Something that goes on forever is not a project. So, a lot of times when we ask for a project list, the first thing we'll do when we do an IT assessment or strategic plan is, hey, what are the things that are going on in your organization? We'll get a giant list of things, tasks that they do weekly, things that they do once but are not necessarily projects. So keeping in mind what a project is and what are tasks and what are key large initiatives is really important. So asking that question will tell you a lot more than just the list of projects. It'll tell you how the CIO or your IT organization thinks about things and how they're organized. The best case scenario, of course, is that they have a short and long term plan. It's laid out in a Gantt chart or some sort of fashion that is visual, that you can easily see and look up and ask for updates on. Um, that's the best case. Let's see. A question just came in. If a city manager or similar leader recognizes the need for a more forward-thinking CIO, what steps can they take to help their organization find and secure a new CIO? Um, Sort of a controversial question there, but I'll take it. Um, y- you know, if you call us and say all we want to do is replace our CIO, that's not the best scenario for us to walk into. Uh, because we don't know what has transpired and if you're even making the right decision to bring us in to just support that one piece is tricky. The best thing to do is, again, do a ground up assessment, compare yourself to best practices, to benchmark against other similar organizations, get expert advice and help on what is needed, and then we can make a recommendation on where to go from there. And a lot of times it becomes evident, it becomes obvious that something that's worked for you for 30 years isn't working anymore, and you need to look elsewhere. But you can't go at it from just that you want to replace a personality, and therefore uh, Avero come and help us do this. Great question. Cybersecurity, of course. What measures are we taking to protect our data and systems from cyber threats? Great question. An important point to make here is, if you get the answer that we have cybersecurity insurance and that's it, you're in trouble. Cybersecurity insurance um, may be easy to get, but it's never easy to claim on. Insurance companies will make you show them what guardrails you had in place. um, they'll look at the whole thing, and we do a great We offer a great service called, we do a cybersecurity assessment as part of our IT assessments and strategic plans that goes beyond just the technical aspects. We'll look at it from a 22-point NIST framework and tell you, in addition to your technical stack that is supposed to keep you cyber secure, where in the management realm are you falling short? Do you have the right documentation? Do people know what role they need to play? Do you have a disaster recovery plan? Do you have an incident response plan? All of that needs to be baked into the measures um, that we have in place to keep our organization secure. So it's never just cyber insurance, and it's never just buying the fanciest SIM or antivirus software. It has to be a combination of everything. Um, and that kind of leads me into talking about potential cyber attacks. What is our incident response plan? We've touched on it. Knowing what to do when an attack happens, knowing when to how to identify one, how to respond, having all of that documented, people trained, and ready to go is the right way of doing this. The next question that comes to mind is, what emerging technologies should we be aware of, and how could they impact our business? So this is a two-way street. As a functional leader, let's say you are an HR director, let's say you are a public works director, it's it it's your job to bring emerging technologies to the CIO. It may sound counterintuitive, right? The CIO, again, is a master of their domain as far as the hardware, software, and the infrastructure goes. They can't be expected to be experts in the functional area of HR. That's the HR director's job. So as an HR director, you're going to conferences, you're talking to peers, you're reading magazines and publications, and if a piece of technology is being talked about or advertised to you, it's on you to bring that to your CIO to then evaluate and then make sure that it fits the business need, or that it fits within the overall IT infrastructure and strategy. Um, and that's how you foster a culture of innovation too, because innovation just can't come from the CIO or the IT organization. It has to come from every department within the organization. Uh, the next question that may be important is, how do you ensure that our IT projects are delivered on time and within budget? This is a question that ties back to my earlier point on what key IT initiatives are going on right now. If you can't define what a project is, if you can't define a timeline, if you can't define the various initiatives that are going on in the organization, you'll never get to delivered on time, within budget, and quality, because those projects will never end. So how do you measure success? So having a strategic plan that is focused on technology, having a great project management culture, and someone responsible for keeping up with the very details of those projects is very critical. Taking a break for questions. Let's see. How does a CIO measure the ROI on digital transformation projects? It's really hard. And I know you meant to say CIO. Um, ROI can be easily measured when you have a profit incentive, which is the private sector. In the public sector, it's really hard because you're not going to make more money by implementing a certain thing. You might save money, um, but in the grand scheme of things, when the organization is not responsible to generate wealth or increase profits or increase shareholder value, ROI becomes difficult to manage. And we've dealt with this before. You can always come up with assumptions to come up with an ROI that feels good. You can come up with social ROI. You can come up with many different ways to measure the success of any project, let alone a digital transformation project. But it's hard to do in the public sector. Uh, but you can do it with the right assumptions and everyone having agreed on those assumptions. What about the people side of the organization? While CIOs often excel in tech implementation, they sometimes overlook critical people related aspects such as change management. How do you ensure these needs are met? Very, very true comment. Um, CIOs go at, not all of them. Again, the general caveat is we're not saying this is all true all the time, but most of the time we've seen this. Upgrades, projects that involve major user groups are sometimes never consulted. When there's an upgrade, when there's a new system being implemented, when there's some testing going on, you're gonna, take the system offline. So change management is important not only in terms of, the academic sort of how do you feel and how do we organize this change and how do we move forward as an organization. There's a micro element to change management, and it's as simple as letting people know that your system's going to be down from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., not surprising people with a change on a Monday morning, not taking systems down on the day that you're supposed to be collecting taxes. So that is a very small piece of change management, but it rolls up into the larger, sort of more theoretical elements of change management. All right, going back to the questions, we were at um, digital transformation. What is our roadmap for digital transformation? We've covered that in strategy. You have to have a strategy roadmap that's converted into projects. Cloud strategy. What is our current cloud strategy, and how are we balancing cloud and on-premise solutions? This may seem like a technical question. If you're non-technical, don't be intimidated by it. This simply means how are we leveraging the cloud, what it means to us as an organization. And again, on our YouTube channel, we did some videos on public versus private cloud, when to use what it means. So please go check it out. um, and and yeah, it's possible to have cloud-based solutions and on-prem solutions. 5 years ago, cloud was everything. Everyone was going to throw everything in the cloud and have nothing on premise. That sort of has evolved a little bit. I think the best practice today that most CIOs are um, undertaking is a hybrid solution where your critical infrastructure stays on premise and you're sending backups and applications into the cloud. But again, this is very flexible to your need. But as an executive that is either overseeing a CIO or working with one as a peer, this is a good question to ask because it ultimately will impact your business function and area. Um, how are we optimizing our IT infrastructure, ensure scalability and reliability? Now, this is really important when it comes to a growing organization. Let's talk about public safety. When a police department implements a body cam system or they implement cactus cams to record intersections within the city, that data, that video data needs to be stored somewhere. So you may go and buy, a 2 GB extra storage from the vendor, but that 2 GB is going to get filled up within a week or more or less. Like it's not enough, and you'll always run out of space. So how do you make that system scalable? What methods are in place to make sure that your disk space or your cloud space is not getting eat up? And that's the downside, right? If you're not careful with eating up cloud space, your monthly cloud bill is going to be increasing every day. So there are methods out there, there are solutions out there that allow you to have a fixed cost for scalable storage, and please reach out if you want more information on that. But through some recent demos on ERPs and public safety systems, we know that that's a problem that can be easily solved. Question. Who should be in charge of digital transformation, CIO or CFO or both? Ooh. Uh, I think driving the vision should come from the top executive. This is my firm belief. And then the CIO and CFO need to work together. In the public sector, a lot of times CFOs oversee IT organizations. They oversee IT directors, IT managers, um, and then it becomes an easier conversation because it's hierarchical. When they're peers, they have to work together, and the CIO needs to be able to explain to the CFO why they're asking for money for digital transformation in business terms, in accounting terms, this is where the sales hat of the CIO is really important. And this is where these questions are really important for a CFO to ask the CIO as they're in this debate about um, raising the funds to be able to do this transformation. So both should be in charge. It really depends on how your organization's set up. If the CFO is overseeing IT, then it's easy, and if they are peers, then you have to really work together. So good question. Um, Partner and vendor management we've talked about. Let's see. Budget and investment. This is a good one. How do you prioritize IT investments, and what is our current budget allocation? Uh, this is an important question to ask a CIO. And a lot of times, what you'll get is, and again, if you're a CFO, CEO, mayor, our budget is what we had last year, but we want one more position or two more positions. Why do you want two more positions? Well, it feels like we have more work. Not good enough answers, right? But it's a good question to start with because that gives you an idea of how mature your organization is in IT and how they're going about their business. Because how this should work is if you need more bodies for your IT organization, the decision point should be how many tickets of what kind came in last year. Here's the data. Here's how we solved them. Here was the skill gap. This is why we need one or two more positions with these skills. It can just be generic help desk folks. Sometimes that's needed. Um, but if you can get that answer out of your IT organization, you're in a good spot because it's well thought out. It's data focused. It's based on actual um, data for the last year, and it's really helpful for you as an executive to make that decision. Uh, let's see. Customer experience. How are we using technology to enhance the customer experience? Now, this is again a two-pronged sort of question because you can be asking that to your um, customer service department or your HR organization or your permitting department because these are all external facing organizations that are ambassadors of your organizations to the rest of the world. So how are we using technology to enhance customer experience? So if you are a customer service director for, let's say, a transit authority or utility, this is an important question to ask not just your CIO, but also yourself, because you're the one that's exposed to the client. You're the one that's exposed to the customer, and you're the one that's talking to other, peers of yours in the industry, keeping an eye on best practices and trends in customer service. And you need to take that knowledge to the CIO and then decide if this is the right product. Does it fit within your organization? You might already have something that's part of your customer care and billing system that needs to be just turned on. So keeping up with new trends in technology in your functional area will only help you interact and get the best out of your IT organization. And then the last one is, what feedback have you received from customers regarding our platforms and services? This is the hard one because as soon as you implement a new system, there's a period when most people hate it. They long for the old system. They don't want to do business in a new way. So keeping your pulse on the user base is really important. And you can do that through change management practices that we've talked about in previous videos. And just keeping up with the sentiment is really important because as a CIO, it's your job because you will be blamed for a new system that doesn't work, no matter how much or how little influence you had on the selection and the implementation of it. Um, so keeping your pulse is really important on the client. And a comment is, I love this data question as data is not the most exciting piece of an implementation project, but it's critical. As a CIO, how do you ensure you're compliant with data regulations? Um, a big part of going to the cloud and to software as a service providers is that you can actually outsource this. You can keep them accountable, keep the vendors accountable for data regulations and compliance. Of course, you have to understand that what you're in for and what the compliance requirements are. And a lot of times, organizations have legal departments, they have compliance departments that oversee these sort of regulations. So again, CIO doesn't have to be an expert because uh, they're experts in their own domain. So other people, other departments need to lend their hand with regulations and compliance. Last question. Even though a public sector CIO doesn't have the same bottom line profit pressure as a private sector CIO, what aspects about being a public sector CIO are harder? What a great question. Funding, not the lack of it, the timing of it. Even if you want something that is urgent, of course, if it's an emergency, you can always get the funding. But in a non-emergency situation where you know a certain piece of software or a product is going to help the organization, you have to wait until next July or whenever your fiscal year starts to get that in place. So that's a major piece of this. The second thing is um, your peers not understanding your world, right? If a thing doesn't work, CIO is blamed. If something breaks and your system's down, CIO is blamed. Uh, Without understanding what is involved in keeping up these systems, it's a lot of work, especially for CIOs that have inherited an older mess. CIO of 30 years used duct tape and baling wire on everything, and then retired, and then new person supposed to take over, and a major piece of software breaks. People just don't understand all of the missing pieces, in their knowledge of technology before they place the blame on the CIO. So again, communication, a little bit of salesmanship is really important for CIOs to get out of that perception, and also being really careful about what they choose to own, because just because it says software doesn't mean it has to be owned by the IT organization. So no more questions. This will be published on all of our channels, podcast platforms, and I think we'll do another blog post on this topic because it seems to be getting a lot of attention. If you have more follow-up questions or questions about my questions, please feel free to reach out. We are available on all social platforms, and on our YouTube channel. So go ahead and subscribe,